We are a convention for fans from all backgrounds, any fans of science fiction, fantasy, horror, gaming, art, and generally just anything geeky at all. That's been one of the fun parts, is expanding outside of like traditional fandom, and because we realize that like people have different kind of stuff they nerd out about, right? It could be history or science or fountain pens, whatever it is. The common thread is that there's a strong interest in something that you want to share with people. So that's the point of conventions in my book, but also Multiverse in particular, is let everybody get together in an environment where everybody feels welcomed and included, like genuinely included. And it happens every October, third weekend of every October. This year it's October 20th through 22nd in Atlanta, which I figure most people know. At the Westin Atlanta Perimeter North, all the stuff's at multiversecon.org.
For this episode, we welcome folk singer Mark Gunn and international best-selling author Jessica Cade. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and join us as we put the spotlight on the Multiverse Convention with your host, Joe Compton. Yes, hello everybody. We are live. Welcome back to the Spotlight on Multiverse, and look, everybody, Mark Gunn's here with me.
Hey there, how's it going?
Good. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Mark.
All right. So I am a musician. I've been playing music for 20, 30 years. I don't know, long time. But I got my start playing at Renaissance festivals. But nowadays I call my music sci-fi-ish music, because
Nice.
it started off at Renaissance Festival. It started as drinking songs, but eventually evolved into songs that are geeky and fun and funny and such. So I've been doing that for 24 years, I guess. I started podcasting as well, so I'm a podcaster. I've been hosting the Irish and Celtic Music podcast and the Pub Songs and Stories podcast for 18 years. And I love making music. A lot of the themes that I end up writing songs about are Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Firefly, cats, because cats, and some Dungeons and Dragons songs. A lot of geeky, nerdy, fun songs, and good sing-along songs. That's a big part of what I do. Is since I've been playing Celtic music for so long, it's all about interaction. It's about singing and interacting with your audience, and it's a lot of fun.
Do you like the term folk? Is that something that you would embrace?
Yeah, I definitely call my music folk. I mean, I don't use the term in general, but I think it's very appropriate for what I do. But we've had a lot of talk about what folk is, and folk to me is like it's the music of fandom. So it kind of fits with my music quite a bit. But it's also about the community. And I'm definitely, well, I don't, I'm not at every folk circle or the Pegasus of the Ohio Folk Valley Folk Festival. I definitely do a lot of folk conventions, and I'm at Dragon Con. I've been playing there for 20 some since 2002. And lots of other conventions as well. So when I first started, actually, I was at a Renaissance festival and we got hired to play a wedding, and someone came up, the groom, as my partner and I were playing music behind them and something, and he calls us forward and he says, "I love that you play filk." And we're like, what the hell is filk? And at the time we had no clue. We had, my old band, the Brobdingnagian Bards, we're doing a song called "If I Had a Million Ducats," which is a parody of "If I Had $1 Million," for those who don't know. And there's also a song called "Do Virgins Taste Better," which is a filk based on an Irish melody called Irish Washerwoman.
Nice.
This thing means nothing. I'm like, what the heck is filk? And he's like, the stuff you do. And so that really it got me searching, like, what is this filk thing that you talked about? And little did I know that I was playing filk. Yeah.
Nice.
It just all came together after that, and then I started, my first convention was Icon on Long Island many years ago, and we got hired by this woman who found us on mp3.com. She said, you need to come play at our convention, and we played my first Filk Circle, which was a lot of fun and inspiring in many different ways. Ended up writing a song. There's this guy who was he'd written this song called the Pangalactic Gargle Blaster, Douglas Adams. And of course, I'm like, I heard the song and I didn't like his song at all. And I was like, it stuck in my head though. I was like, one of these days I'm going to write a song that with lyrics that rhyme to Pangalactic Gargle Blaster. And eventually I did. So,
I have friends who do Filk. They're called the Faithful Sidekicks, and I've had them on my show before, and I've reviewed their albums and stuff like that. But they're
they
famous.
were at Dragon Con, and they were at Gen Con. I do a comedy music cabaret at Gen Con, and they played for me out there, so it was awesome.
Oh, nice. Yeah, nice. They're really cool. I like those guys a lot. But we have the people in the chat saying hello. Anita, hi. Vanessa, hello. What brought what? I know you're local, and you're really local. You're really local. To Multiverse. But what brought you there? Was it people at Dragon Con talking about it? How did you find out about Multiverse?
I think it was actually from an internet search, because at the time, we moved to Atlanta. I was slowly moving east. I'm originally from Texas, started in Austin, moved to New Orleans, got married, had a kid. We moved to Birmingham, and next thing you know, we're in Atlanta. In 2019, my wife got a job here, and so I was like, hey, well, let's, obviously it was great because I started playing. I was living in Texas when I started playing at Dragon Con, and now here I am. Like, it's 15 minutes from my house. It's brilliant. But I had moved here, and I was like, I need to find some venues, some places to play, and conventions are, I got started at playing Renaissance Festival. So the funny thing about playing Renaissance festivals is I loved playing them. I mean, they were a little bit taxing energy wise, heat and weather. My instrument, my auto harp, it just takes a beating. But the funny thing about it was that we didn't build a huge fan base playing at Renaissance festivals. I mean, we did, but they didn't go to the fair. They worked there. So it turned out that our audience, our target audience, was all the people who worked and loved Renaissance festivals with a passion. And you know what they do in their spare time? They go and have fun at conventions. So they don't work at conventions. They just go for fun. And so that's how I ended up at my first convention. Is that there's all these people saying, you've never been to a convention, a sci-fi convention? I'm like, you got to go. And, and so I went, and lo and behold, all my people were really there. So, but in Multiverse, I came across that way. I was looking for some what kind of conventions were local. And I reached out to them a couple years back, and this is my third or fourth year. So yeah, it's been amazing every year. And I've, it's so cool. It was definitely one of the first conventions, local conventions that I playing big conventions like Dragon Con and Gen Con, and even some smaller ones in Texas, though, they none of them had this this down to earth feel. So my I'm gonna geek back a little bit. So I started playing Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s, and my favorite characters, hobbits and elves, mostly in the hobbits, or halflings rather. But and that's where I fell in love with Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. Then along comes Firefly. I fell in love with Firefly, and I do Firefly drinking songs and Hobbit drinking songs at Dragon Con, these big shows. They're huge. But I noticed that a lot of people from Firefly and Hobbit drinking songs, they go intermix and go to the same shows. And it struck me, something that struck me was that there's a very much a down home cultural this thing that that both of those things have. They're very down to earth pieces of art. You know, you got these basically country boys on Firefly, and these country boys in Lord of the Rings. You know, and it's and I feel like the smaller conventions, especially that I've noticed in Atlanta, and especially at Multiverse, it was a very a community oriented a convention event. It was just there's a lot of the people were very friendly, you know, very interactive. And while, you know, it's not like I'm playing constant shows or anything, it's more about the interaction. And I love one of my favorite things actually was that they had the meetup groups, and I've had my best times have been going to these little meetup groups where I'm like, you know, we're doing different things, but we're chatting about our similarities. You know,
Awesome.
I go to like the media stuff, and you know, since I've been doing podcasting, and so we're interacting in that format with the interacting with the community, and just it was wonderful, a wonderful experience. And so yeah, that's really what got me excited about going back to Multiverse each and every year, you know.
Nice.
So
Vanessa says, I think they resonate very much with regular people. I think she's talking about Firefly and the connection of Lord, but the fantastical elements is what nerds love.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's regular people doing extraordinary things, you know.
Yeah, the underdog. And there's an underdog feeling to Multiverse in a lot of ways. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because you're a prominent fixture there now. You do have a concert there, and I know that because I have a couple friends that they don't miss your concert when the time comes. They're like, "Oh, when's Mark Gunn playing?" Well, okay, I can't go do that. I gotta go see Mark. I'm curious about that element for you and performing. I'm sure there's some songs that people have gravitated toward and look forward to you singing. But as a performer, as an artist who puts on shows, you know, tailoring it to the Multiverse crowd, how much do you think about your set list in terms of, you know, mixing the new with the old and putting some of them more familiar together while introducing them to new stuff? Is that, I mean, that's the thing about musicians doing it anyway, but you know, for Multiverse, there's a different type of crowd, right? So then Dragon Con, especially, you know, so you know, I mean, they're similar. They have similar ideas, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know if I've actually thought about that, which is an interesting thing to consider. I mean, in general, I'm very conscious of the type of songs that I play for my shows. I always consider it really important to, you know, create a set list that well, mostly because I forget lyrics if I don't have a set list, but it helps to have a set list that leads people on an emotional journey. And if I can tell a story and through my songs, even better. I did a podcast panel recently called or a panel at a convention called How to Write Drinking Songs, and it was a story. I told a story basically of my journey learning to write drinking songs while singing songs in the process. And it's a similar sort of process in creating a show of any sort. And so doing one with you know, but I haven't actually thought of it as you know, specific. Now I have thought about as far as the music. So one of the things I've noticed with musicians over the years is that, you know, you have your hits, you have the songs that people really love and that they want to hear over and over and over again. But I realized this past year that my music has changed a lot over the past, you know, 20 some odd years. And I don't know that I've entirely embraced that change. I have, you know, 2 fantastic new albums. How much are they represented in these sets? Which I haven't really thought about, you know, because some of my more popular albums, I have an album called Don't Go Drinking with Hobbits, and Firefly drinking songs, and sci-fi drinking songs, and Irish drinking songs for cat lovers. It's a pet project. They're all really popular with the people who listen to my music, but are they representative of the music that I'm creating now? And those are all, they're all 8+ years old, I think. And so it's I have been thinking a lot on that recently, and how much I should be focusing on older material versus newer stuff to bring in so the people who find my music now will be like, oh, this is what he is, this is his music, whereas, and then they might still end up loving the older stuff. But
it's the great dilemma for a musician. It's the ultimate thought process. And also, on top of all that, you have deep cuts in the album that you don't normally play live that somebody might really love. There's a certain ownership with a musician lover like myself. I know this, that there's a deep cut that really resonates with me, right?
Exactly.
That's not a popular hit. We might like the popular hits too, or we might loathe them because they're popular or whatever the case may be. But but those deep cuts that resonate, and when you hear those live, when a band pulls that out of nowhere, out of thin air, and just plays that, it's an amazing experience. You feel like they're talking to you. Right.
Exactly. And you have to find that balance. And it's never easy, especially when you have like an hour-long set. I mean, I did a show actually with my friend Mikey Mason. He's another
he was musician at Con Carolinas this year.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so we did a show together. We did a Firefly drinking song show at Gen Con. It was a 2-hour show, which was brilliant because we both have done a full-length Firefly. I have 3 albums of Firefly, almost 4 albums of Firefly songs, 2 they're exclusively Firefly, and he has his own plus several others. We've done all this music. We have plenty of music to play for a 2-hour set, but we go to Dragon Con and we do it in an hour. And it's like, man, you miss out. I can't do this song and this song and this song and this song, but they really want to hear this song. I can't do that. It doesn't work with the flow of the show. It doesn't, and so it's a challenge. It's a challenge to figure out how to put together a set that's going to appease certainly you, finding new fans,
right,
and still making people who already love your music happy,
and being the artist you are now because you've evolved and become a different artist, right? So all of that is Vanessa works along what Vanessa's question was, which is, she asked, I'm sure there's positive and negatives for each, but how are the shows different for you in a larger venue like Dragon Con versus a smaller venue like Multiverse?
That's always it varies. Okay. So Dragon Con, I do again Firefly drinking songs, Hobbit drinking songs. You can imagine what the audience is like. The line goes out the room out, and you have to wait for an hour. They're packed. They're a lot of fun. They're high energy. Everyone is singing along. If they don't know the lyrics, they're about to learn them. So it's absolutely brilliant. And when you take that and then you go to a smaller convention where you have 5-10 people, on the one hand, you don't have that huge energy that everyone has. On the other hand, you don't get to actually meet the people, every one of those people. Which
that would be brutal.
There's something about actually talking to someone afterwards. I know there's a woman who's shown up to several of my shows at Dragon Con every year. She likes Filk and such, and I've see her every year, and I get to chat with her about music and such, which I don't always get. And then also, though, again, my shows are about learning the songs and teaching people how to sing along, how these songs go. And so there's a wonderful sense of interactivity and more ownership, I feel like, that comes from being in a smaller community where people can really get excited and get to know the music.
Vanessa says, "Oh my God, yes, the deep cuts." I'm like that with Duran Duran, of course. I never hear Rio live. I can never hear Rio live. I'll be 100% fine with that. LOL. Yeah, I can relate. Yeah. You along with this too. You vend at Multiverse. You have a
Yeah.
table that you sell your music at, do you do that at Dragon Con as well? Do you have a
Yeah.
table at Dragon Con?
Yeah,
So
so I at the Dragon Con, I do it with my old music partner, Andrew McKee of the Brobdingnagian
mhm.
Bards. And Gen Con, I do stuff solo. But yeah, I've been doing, tables is one of the big ways that uh, more unique among musicians in that I've long understand that there's, it's a business too. You
Mhm.
have to do stuff. It's sort of like, CDs.
Mhm.
CDs are a wonderful way of listening to music, but I also know that over half my audience no longer listens to CDs,
Yeah.
including me. I host, one of the largest podcasts of Celtic music in the world. And do I have a CD player? I think so. It's buried in someplace, and I tell people I don't accept CDs anymore because
Yeah.
I just it's not my we're in a digital age. So I started actually adapting it. Carol knows my routine with CDs. You're supposed to say you have CDs. Um, but I also have these musical pens, which is my latest thing. Musical
Yeah.
pens are enamel pens, which a lot of musicians are doing. But I
Yeah.
also you get a digital download that comes with it, and you can see the track listing and all that stuff. So you get a physical representation. Plus, you get to wear your album on your sleeve because the pen is themed to the album. So, which is it's a nice way to do that. So that's one of the things I do. I also break a lot of strings on my auto harp. So I
Yeah.
start turning those into pieces of jewelry. So
Oh, nice. That's
yeah,
cool. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, MJ Preston is the person who's talking here, and he said, "Yeah, we're going back to vinyl." I was going to ask you about that. What's your thoughts on the craze right now? And I'm sure there's a lot of collectors that come up to you and at Dragon Con, especially because you probably interact with 1,000 more people a day there. Has anybody asked you about vinyls and
No
pressing
one
it?
asked. Actually, no one asked me. And I think part of that is a large part of that is the audience.
Yeah,
My audience, when you're talking Celtic music, you're talking about an older audience, 40s through
yeah,
60s. Um, all of those we people are, CDs are fine.
yeah,
Um, it's the younger crowd, I think, that gets more into the vinyl, which is again when you get into filk too, it is typically an older crowd as well.
yeah,
So it hasn't really come to my audience as much. I would love actually I have released an album on vinyl, and I keep wanting to re-release it. The problem is that I am a little bit anti. One of the first lessons I learned as a musician is that you go and buy 1,000 CDs, and then you have 1,000 CDs sitting on your shelf for years. Once upon a time, I could actually sell 1,000 CDs in a year. That is no longer the case,
mm,
and so the idea of even buying 100 vinyl records, I don't know where I'm going to put them. I mean,
yeah.
that's my stuff right
Plus,
back
those
there.
are expensive to
Oh my
press.
they're cheap. Yes, they are more expensive. I found a one-off distributor that will do stuff, but the base cost is so absurd. It's not entirely worth it. It's a vanity thing. If I want it, it's a vanity thing. So
Yeah, and I would
um,
think it would be like a collector's thing anyway. Most people don't; they just collect them; they don't play them. So if
yeah,
although that's changing now too. I've seen a lot of people using them to
exactly.
play.
Which
But
is why again I have the musical pens, which
mhm.
they fit in a box like this, and makes me a lot happier. Plus, you get the digital downloads, in whatever format you want through Bandcamp. It's fantastic.
What's a song you play that you're surprised that people gravitate toward that
Um,
sing along?
I think one of my uh, songs that has been yeah, I don't know if I necessarily get surprised by any songs these days, but
Yeah,
Don't Go Drinking with Hobbits was definitely a pleasant surprise. It was based on a true story that happened at Dragon Con. um, and but fantasized, of course, to made fun. But I don't think I get really surprised by anything these days. There are songs that I will hope that they will do better than they do, but I usually know,
Yeah.
because a lot of the songs that I write, I since I'm going for the drinking songs aspect, they usually have a very simple chorus, something that is easy to sing along to,
Mm.
and it works out great. People get into it, and it may not be a perfect, but it works well. I did write a new song with my my partner, the Brobdingnagian and Bards, called Love Song to Alcohol, which is a different sort of song.
Mm.
We have a song, I mentioned the song If I Had a Million Ducats, which is a sort of an improv song. It has certain parts, but then we have people throw in words to
Mm.
make it a little bit more interesting. And this song does too, where you throw out alcohol types that you love, and we have to rhyme them and sing them. And the construction of the song is very different, which I love, because it's neat to see that it does, everything doesn't have to fall in the same format.
Mm.
Most of my songs fall into a very simple format, but this one does not, and it's really cool. So yeah.
Is Celtic music enjoying a resurgence right now? Is it enjoying a pretty highlight right now, or is it kind of leveled off a little bit?
I think it's still leveled. Early 2000, you had the Celtic Tiger, where
Yeah,
and it was getting really popular.
yeah.
I
You had
don't
the
know.
sisters who were doing the Celtic music for a
And
while.
you got Celtic Woman, and you got the Celtic Thunder.
Hmm.
There's still a lot of bands, Celtic bands, but again, we're on the internet, and it
Yeah,
honestly, it doesn't matter. I mean, sci-fi-ish music is not a thing, but it can be online, because there are people who love Celtic music. They love science fiction and fantasy, and that's where I've made my niche.
mm,
And because I interact, it's an intersection of those two, people who love drinking songs and love fantasy and sci-fi. That's where I find my base. So
mhm.
yeah.
I'm sure you're very comfortable with where you are and who you are now. But was there a point in your music career where you were looking at it and going, try? Should I experiment? Should I try different things? Should I be more serious? Write more serious songs. I mean, not that drinking songs aren't serious, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
was there ever a point for you in that respect? You were thinking about that aspect
I,
of it?
I've gone through a lot of changes through the years. So the Bards, when we started, we were again playing Renaissance festivals.
Yeah,
We found this song, Jedi Drinking Song, which became a part of our set, which was sort of the entryway for me when we split up in 2008. It was the entryway that led to other songs, and I started writing songs inspired by Firefly. But when we split up, I was doing again drinking songs, Irish songs,
yeah.
and I went through a lot of dips and curves. I did went to Hobbit songs and more cat songs. I went into I went through a wide variety. Actually, but interestingly, I think like most of my albums are themed, so they
Mm.
have a very tight theme of again you want a Firefly song album, here's one, here's two, here's a Cat's album, here's a Hobbit CD. They're very themed, Scottish, Irish. It makes for easy selling, but over the past few years, um, especially since I've moved to Atlanta, I've been exploring a little bit more of what I want as a musician, because I'm also playing more locally. I'm not doing just at conventions. I'm playing at breweries and all around town. I'm
Mm.
playing songs for my wife. What does she want to hear? Because she actually gets to come to my shows now, which when we started, that was not the case. um, so yeah, there definitely in the past few years, I've explored a lot of different musical uh, eh, taking my music in different ways,
Mhm.
um, and trying to see what I can do. I'm starting to I haven't never done much with effects. I've been mostly a folk musician, but over the past couple of years, I've been, exploring what kind of effects can I use when I'm playing live. Which so it is neat. It's neat to try new things and see how I can grow with it. Yeah.
Mm. And Anita says, "Come to Nova Scotia. Celtic music never dies there. Celtic
Yeah.
music never dies there." um,
I would love to get back up there. Or get up there, period, rather. Yeah.
are you a bigger fan of live than recording albums? Do you enjoy the live aspect a little bit more than recording? I would imagine because of the nature of your music that lends itself to a live performance a lot more than maybe some would.
I love both, honestly. I got into the music originally because I wanted to be a songwriter like Elvis
Hmm.
Presley. Of
Hmm.
course, I also learned that Elvis Presley didn't write any songs. So, uh, um, that was out the window. But I liked I got into it because I wanted to write music, and now playing when you start playing in front of crowds like the 900 or 600 or 300 or whatever at these big shows,
Hmm.
it's a rush. I can understand why people want to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I like what I do. I honestly I like all of what I do. I like the fact that I get to play for big audiences. I like that I get to play for small audiences, especially when it really affects someone.
Hmm.
My the best thing is when someone is moved by what I do in
Nice.
some form or fashion, whether joy, depression, sadness, rather, you get a tear in their eye, whatever. But something that just moves people on an emotional level. But I also love creating something new that gets to be repeated. My the thing that I like the least about the modern music era is with streaming is that it's people don't appreciate it, don't financially appreciate the music as much.
Hmm.
The buying CDs again are the number one way that musicians like me have been able to make a living. It's all
Hmm.
about the merch. If you're not selling something, you can't make a living as a musician. So streaming, you can't make money off of streaming
Yeah.
in general. I mean, there are always exceptions, but in general, you can't do that. So that's my, but not saying I object to it. Don't get me wrong, but it is a challenge, a concern from me. But I also love the fact that I can do podcasting where I can share music from around the world and
Hmm.
help other musicians be heard. I remember when I first sent an album to get reviewed, and I was like hounding the person to play. Can you please do this? It was like a Dirty Linen magazine, and then finally they responded and posted this one paragraph review, and I was like, wow, that's it. And I was like, and I realized, it's tough for musicians
Yeah.
to get heard, and if I can help them in some form or fashion, then I will do that. And I know I have a few extra marketing skills that I've learned over the years for myself. I can help out musicians using those things in my podcast, and it's worked out quite brilliantly. But I don't think there's one that I love more than the other.
Fair
I
enough.
like them all. It's there's anything that I really wish I did is was a little bit less time sitting in front of the computer,
Hmm.
a little bit
I
more
can
time outside.
I can understand that. Yeah. So where can people find this lovely music of yours and your podcast? See, where can people check those out at?
So the quickest way is to go to keltfather.net. I have a website at markgunn.com, but keltfather.net has quick links to pretty much to everything. You can quickly subscribe to my podcasts. You can find my store to buy music. You can listen to music. Find streaming music to listen over there if you want to do that. Yeah, everything is pretty much there. So
Nice.
it's a great and easy way to do that. Keltfather.net, and that is with a C.
Nice. Well, Mark, it's a real pleasure to talk to you. You're a staple at Multiverse. I'll look forward to seeing you there in a few weeks. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it myself. It's fun
All
too.
right. So we'll be back. I'm good. We have a little interlude here where I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons to attend Multiverse, and then because time's running out, guys, you gotta get there. Gotta get there now. So let's do that, and then I'll be back with Jessica Cage. And now, here are all the reasons we have done this season to attend the Multiverse Convention in 2023. The Multiverse Art Show features science fiction, fantasy, horror, and comic-themed artwork for you to browse and bid on in a silent auction format. The Gaming Hall. Whether you want to grab a quick game between events or hang out all weekend long, the Multiverse Gaming Hall is the place to be. You get to choose from a selection of the best tabletop strategy and RPG games to check out from the Game Central. The Meat Track, hosted by Gigi Ying. This is a neat little space at Multiverse in which like-minded folk gather to talk shop, to intellectualize, to get together, and become a volunteer. Volunteering offers a great way to see what goes on behind the scenes of a con, as well as make new friends and support the charitable efforts. On top of that, all volunteers who work at least 12 hours during or prior to Multiverse will receive a full 3-day membership. Cosplay. If you've been to cons before, then you already know. If you haven't, then we've got a real treat in store for you. Cosplay shows are always one of the most entertaining and memorable events at conventions. The Multiverse Cosplay Expo will feature cosplayers of all skill levels, so even if you're a first-timer, don't be afraid to enter the list and show us your creative costume. The Dealer's Room. The Dealer's Room is a collection of collectibles, books, comics, art, games, clothes, toys, cosplay items, jewelry, handmade crafts, and sundries. Shop to your heart's content in the Multiverse Dealer's Room. Creators, craftspeople, and vendors from all over gather in the Dealer's Hall and Creators Alley to showcase the coolest sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and pop culture themed merchandise around. The supporting charities. For 2023, all charity proceeds will go to benefit one of our favorite charities, Backpack Buddies of Metro Atlanta. Since 2022, Backpack Buddies of Metro Atlanta has followed one single mission: to provide weekend meals to food insecure children across Metro Atlanta. Backpack Buddies of Metro Atlanta provides bags of food free of charge, enough to feed each child for a weekend, distributed each Friday at schools around the Metro Atlanta area. Our main fundraising event for 2023 is the Silent Charity Auction, where you can score some of the coolest, rare, and unique items while contributing directly to a great cause. The Con Suite. At Multiverse, they believe in serving up real food and good times all weekend long. It's located in the Presidential Suite at the West End. The Multiverse Con Suite is a place where you can get tasty meals if you don't want to leave the con, as well as in-between light meals, snacks, and drinks, all free with your Multiverse membership. Con Suite serves meals at the times listed on the website and keeps a grab-to-go snacks and drinks during all open hours to feed all of you. The awesome Amy Anderchuk, better known as the Kitchen Witch, is the mastermind behind all of the incredible meals that you get. What are you waiting for? Join us today. Go to multiversecon.org and register to become a member of the Multiverse. And with all of those wonderful things that you can do there, you can also see the awesome Jessica Cage there, who's joining me right now. Hi, Jessica. Nice to meet you.
Hello. How are you?
Good, good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. I thought this was at 10:30 a.m., so.
Sorry. So we'll get you out of here as fast as I possibly can, I promise. But tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do and who you are.
Okay, so again, my name is Jessica Cage. I am a USA Today bestselling author of fantasy featuring strong characters of color. I write fantasy books, and I don't know. My brain is like, girl, it's 10:30 at night. But yeah, I write fantasy books, and I also now help mentor and guide new authors who are entering the writing world.
Yeah, that's neat. I love that. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Everybody's saying hello to you. Lolita's there.
Hi.
Vanessa says hello. Michaela says hello. Uh, so is this your first multiverse?
As a guest, yes, I
Wow.
attended last year for the first time. I was just kind of like getting the feel of the
Checking it out.
space. Yeah,
What were
spent a
your
lot of time in
impressions?
the dealer section.
Nice. What were your impressions? What did you think of it?
It was so well organized. I've been to quite a few conventions over the years, and just the way that you guys had everything lined up, that everyone knew where they were supposed to be, even like me getting there late and needing my pass, and how everyone just kind of jumped on to get me settled. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I want to be a part of this.
Nice. And you are, and we're lucky to
I
have you.
am.
So, I'm sure you've done panels and stuff before, I would be guessing at other cons and things of that nature. So what do you like about panels? What is your favorite thing to do on a panel?
I like to answer questions from the audience. Engaging with readers is like my favorite thing. I do a lot of like TikTok lives and things of that nature where I
Nice.
can just talk to people, which is so weird to say because I am an introvert. So typically I'm like, ew, people know. But when you're talking and engaging with something that you love and enjoy, it's a different thing. So being able to be in a room with people who have genuine interest and be able to answer those questions. And I'm a jokester. So I used to tell, like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Then I realized, like, oh, you have to do that on a stage in front of an audience. Like, no, thank you. So I feel like when I'm doing panels, I tend to tap into that like young interest of like, let me make people laugh a little bit. So yeah.
Well, and the cool thing about multiverse, in terms of, and I'm sure you attended some panels when you were there, but the cool thing is the interaction amongst the panels and the audience. So it just right up your alley if that's the kind of thing you like, because that is what definitely happens.
Yeah.
It becomes more of like a circle of friends talking than it does, kind of question and answer kind of
Awesome.
format.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were looking at the list, was there a specific panel that jumped out at you that you're excited to be a part of?
Um, there were some like late night chats that were on the list. I do write
Those
some
are
spicy.
always the best.
Yes. I do write some spicy fantasy, and those are the panels that I think are always just so much fun. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, people like let their inhibitions fly, and it's like,
yeah.
yes, I'm taking notes for books in the future. You know what I mean?
Are you partaking in any of the late night ones? Did you get invited to any of the late night ones? Which one are you
Yes,
doing?
I do. I have one that's like 10 o'clock at night, I think. I don't know why I keep signing up for things this late. I know I like to go to bed. I'm an old lady at heart. So I will be walking in there with a cup of coffee for sure.
That's funny. What was the panels? Can you tell us?
I don't know off the top
Okay.
of my
No
head,
problem. No problem. No
but
problem.
yes.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Uh, it's interesting. You talk about, right now your mission is to mentor young writers and new writers and kind of get them involved in the process. What is the thing that you've loved the most about that aspect of it? What have they given to you that you didn't expect going into it?
Honestly, I just love seeing people break through the barriers that they put on themselves. One of the questions
Nice.
I get a lot from aspiring writers, authors is, what's the best advice you can give us? What's the best advice you can give us? And I'm always like, stop asking for so much advice. That's the give you, because I think new writers advise themselves away from actually writing.
Nice.
And I always tell people, like, you need to pick like 2 to 3 sources of truth that you get your information from, and let that be it. I'm like, I could be one of them, maybe I'm not, and your sources will change as you progress through your journey. But
Hmm.
tell me, what can you tell me? What can you tell me? I'm like, if you ask 100 people that, they're going to give you 100 different answers, and then you're sitting there trying to figure out what's what. I like to help people connect to like their reason for doing it and have that as their core and then build on that. And watching them blossom through that. Like I'm still very new to like mentoring in the space I'm in, but already I'm just like, oh yes, this is what I love to do. Like
Are you finding that your writing is getting better through doing this process?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my things I'm always trying to learn and grow because I didn't go to school for writing or anything of the such. I should have. I've been writing since I was like could hold a pen. But I went to school for like business administration. They do not teach you anything about like how to write prose and all that. So I'm constantly trying to learn and, improve my own craft. But through helping others, even through like collaborative projects, I'm always like, oh, dang, I never thought of that. Right. So it's always a process of like learning and growing. And then I had to get out of my own way because people were like, yeah, can you mentor me? Can you mentor me? I'm like, who are y'all talking to? Like, I'm not nobody to be mentored. Like, because I still feel like I have so much growth to do. But I had to talk to myself like, girl, you have a 13-year career behind you. People want to know how you did that. So, yeah.
38 books. I mean, that is impressive. I mean,
yes.
Were you looking at volume, or was that just happenstance that you just had a lot of stories to tell and you just had to get them all out?
Yeah, I've always had stories. I don't know where they come from. My son says I look into other universes and steal their stories. And I like that. I like that description. I'm just like peering into other, that's a good one. Write it down. Because I've been writing since I was young. I used to be the talkative child who would come in at the most, like the best part of the movie and be like, guess what I just thought of? Da, 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 da. And my grandmother started giving me a pen and paper. She said, write it down and we'll read it later. And that's how I started writing. So my brain is always just like coming up with these stories. I didn't plan to write 38 books, but here we are.
Yeah, you're gonna fit right in at Multiverse. That's all of us are like, yeah, I love that, peeking into other universes. That's really cool. That's a great grandma. Yes. I agree. Yeah, interesting thing about writing so many books too, and going through the process, and then figuring out where you stand and trying to get better every time you're doing it and everything like that. I'm curious if you feel like the routine was developed through just getting all these stories out, or do you feel like you set yourself a routine, you stuck to it, or has that even evolved for you over time?
Yeah, the routine changes over time. I mean, I was a single mom writing, and I used to have to write at night on the train to work, But as my son got older, his routine changed, so mine had to. And now I'm pretty much full-time writing and at home, and I still have a little extra income because this 13-year-old boy eats a lot. But the routine changes as my life. And that's another thing that I always tell the people who I talk to and mentor through this is you have to make this a part of your life, not compartmentalize it from your life, because that's when you start to feel guilty when you're over here writing and you have all these things going on. When my son was little and he could understand what I was doing, he became a part of the process, right? So I'd be like, hey, if mommy writes 500 words in this session, like we get to do something you want to, you know what I mean? Like so he would be cheering me on. And sometimes I would not hear my goal, but I always told him I did, you know what I mean? Because he gave me that piece that, I was never like, well, I didn't hit it, so go away, But it was always like, he'd be like, yay, we did it. Like, let's go to the park now, So I tried to blend him into this world as much as I could early on so that he felt a part of it and not neglected by it. And then I wouldn't feel like, oh, I'm taking, an hour away from my son on a Saturday when I should be out playing with him. Like, it became our thing. And we're even to the point now where he like critiques my stories. He's giving me advice on like fight scenes because he's into anime and manga and all that. So awesome. He's a part of it, right? So I always tell people, as much as you can, treat this as a part of your life, not something separate from it, because that's where the guilt, and then like if you're not writing, you feel bad, and if you are writing, you feel bad. If you can get past that, this whole process becomes so much more fluid and easy for you to do.
Is he writing now? Is he somebody who has got the bug a little bit too?
So I recently found out that my son actually is a writer. I didn't know. He has a little following that follows his writing on a platform. He just recently shared it with me. And I'm
Oh,
like,
cool.
proud author mommy, because I never want to be like, I'm a writer, you're a writer.
Right.
But he's been a natural storyteller his whole life. He just inherited that from me.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's writing. He does a lot of like RPG games with his
Mm,
friends. And I
nice.
think that's also being tied into his writing. So he finally let me read something, and my mind was blown because I'm like, I'm over here like I'm gonna start blushing, but I'm so proud of him. So yeah.
I'm gonna guess, and this is just me throwing it out there because just based on the posters on your wall and the things that I've read about you and looked at, your value, the thing you value the most is character. Is that something that is really important to you? Is character what drives your stories most of the time for you?
Absolutely. My stories are very much character driven. I like to see the growth of a character. I
Mm,
like to get into my characters' heads and see how much I can like break them down before I build them back up type of thing.
mm,
Cuz I feel like as a reader myself, I always connected more to the character's story, and I wanted to create I know I'm writing about dragons and pixies and things, but like they still need to be relatable and they
mm.
still need to connect with the reader, right? So I literally have a bunch of books on the shelf behind me that are just full of like how to destroy your character type of information.
The
And then
worst things
okay,
you
you
could
can build
do.
it back up. Yeah.
At least without killing them, right? Or maybe with killing them
I
sometimes. But
mean, some of I have gotten a few angry letters from readers in the past, like, "How dare you?"
that's the best, right? That as a writer, you feel. I mean,
Yeah, because
yeah,
you cared enough. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
I did my job. You cared
There's
so
some
much about that
validation.
character that you
Yeah,
emailed me about it. So
yeah. I would imagine for you that you feel that that killing a character is an important aspect for you.
yeah, there are a couple characters when they had to go. I was like, okay, good, I'm done. Like you are so annoying. But there are some characters I feel like I had to take a whole day off. Like I had to mourn the character.
That
And
makes sense.
then my readers have me relive it with them. Like, how dare you do this? Like, you got to bring them back. I'm like, no, I can't bring back every character that leaves the story. But yeah, it's some really sad ones that I've had done over the years.
And you mentioned it that you write from a POC perspective, and that you want that representation to be in the forefront of what you're doing in a lot of the fantasy genre and sci-fi that you write. So, for you, is that putting you into it, or are you trying to just be unconventional with the tropes that exist in the literature that exists for POC characters in these genres?
For me, it's just you grow up and you read stories and you love it and you just don't see yourself represented, right?
Yeah,
So I feel like I'm writing the stories that younger Jessica would have loved to see.
awesome.
It's not necessarily to like break anything that's been there because fantasy is amazing on its own, right?
Yeah,
But and I'm not like in my books, I'm not like throwing it down your throat every 5 seconds, like these people are black.
yeah,
But it's just that I want readers to be able to pick up the story and not have to mentally edit themselves into it. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I say POC because I do write characters of color across the board. I even write non-POC characters, not as much. I'm not gonna lie, it's a couple of them in there, but I grew up in Chicago in a very diverse area. I mean, I went
Nice.
to so many different cultures almost every day of my life, and it's like, then I pick up a book or I turn on a movie, and I'm like, this does not look anything like what's happening outside my door right now. So when I started writing to publish, I was like, I want to do this and I want to make it meaningful to me and to the young Jessicas out there in the world who just love fantasy, love sci-fi, but don't necessarily see themselves represented on the pages.
And that being said, you still have dragons, you still have fairies, you still have the things that people love and gravitate toward to fantasy, right? In that
Absolutely.
aspect, and
Yep.
that's because young Jessica really liked those things too. I would assume. But
Yes, young Jessica was obsessed with phoenixes and dragons, which is why older Jessica has like almost 100 dragon figurines in her home. So yes,
yeah, you can see a couple right there on the
yeah,
shelf.
they're
Yeah.
everywhere.
What is it about dragons? What fascinated you the most about them?
I love the hoarding aspect. I love the grandeur. I love how many different types of dragons there were. The fire breathe. When I was young, I wanted ice breathing dragons to be everywhere. You know what I mean? Because I had the phoenix for the fire,
Yeah.
and I was like, the phoenix can warm me up, and then the ice dragon can like go get me pretty things, and we're all a happy family. I don't know how this human girl was like living with them, but maybe that's a story I can write one day, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's just there's something so grand and powerful and ancient about dragons that it makes me feel like cozy. I don't know.
You know, I love talking to fantasy authors about series in terms of when you finish it. Is there a sense of relief for that, or is there a sense of loss? How did you handle the first time you finished a series?
I never finished my first series because of the sense of loss. And then too many years passed and I was so disconnected from the characters. And I just write an apology letter to my readers like every other year. Like, I'm so sorry. This is never going to happen.
You left it open.
But the stories that I have finished, like my Siren series is my most popular series, always
Yeah.
has been. I wrote the last book, Sirens in the End, and it came out in 2016, right? That was
Yeah.
the end until 2023 when I dropped book 4. So I just always be like, this is goodbye for now. You know what I mean?
It's never goodbye, but see you
When they're
later,
coming
right?
back. Yeah. But generally, like I just want there to be a sense of closure
Yeah.
when I think it's done. Like let's give us all some closure, and if something comes back later, then we're all happy. Like, oh, here are these characters again. But it's difficult. It's hard to say goodbye to these characters, especially like with the world building that you have to do. And like I said, I really get to know my characters to a psychological level. So it's like saying goodbye to my friends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Makes you feel like a little cuckoo, but I'm like, okay, guys, this is the end. And then it's like, tear.
Are you someone who's open to like branching other characters off of the main story into their own story kind of idea?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of side characters that I have stories that I've started writing.
Uh,
Um, I just have to give them the attention. And that's one of the things I'm doing right now is revising a lot of the books from my back catalog so that I
nice.
can get, familiar with them again. And then like I just feel like my writing style has changed. So
Hmm.
me writing more to a story 10 years later, like does it even sound like it's from the same author? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I
while I'm
do.
revising, I'm like, yes, I'm going back into those side stories that I've written and I'm preparing those so that they can start launching in 2025. So yeah.
I know that intimately. I wrote a book that I was always thinking was going to be a standalone, and then it grew a sequel out of demand and out of my publisher at the time telling me you should write more about this. And I wrote the second book, and they were disconnected because I didn't ever intend for them to ever be connected, right?
Yeah.
And then we decided that we were going to do a third book. So going back into the first book, and also what I've discovered when going back in the first book, which was 7 years later after I've published it, was that I was a much better, different writer at the time,
Yes.
and I just started rewriting the whole thing almost.
And it's such a great feeling to see your growth, right?
Yeah,
Because I said the day that I pick up a book I wrote 10 years ago and I'm like, this is still magical, I'm done. Just take the pen away from me. Like you haven't grown in 10 years. You still think this is gold. You know what I mean? You didn't think it was gold when you published it. Your deadline hit, So I always want to see my growth. And so now I'm like, oh, I get to, I have the time and the space to say, okay, now I can go back and pretty these up a little bit and then
yeah,
continue the story. So yeah.
yeah. It's interesting. It's a cathartic exercise, but it's also there is a therapy to it, and also there is some pride in it as well, as you said. But boy, man, it's a lot of work.
It is. And then the readers are like, "What are you relaunching?" I'm like, "Yo, it took me years to write the books just to start. So give me a little time."
Yeah. I always tell people I'm like the Olympics. You're going to get something from me every 4 years, and that's just the way it's going to be. So
That works.
I'm curious, when you started writing series to what you are now, are you someone who always had a plan in mind? Were you someone who knew exactly how many books were going to come, or is that something you developed over time? Do you feel like you can do that now? Like, if you start a new story in your head, do you know right away how many books you're going to write with that, or is that something that just comes naturally with the writing process?
Yeah, I'm a pantser, so I don't always know. I get like a general idea, and I feel like
Hmm.
now I'm a lot more accurate about what that idea is, of how long it is going to be, or how many books it's going to be. My problem now is that the ones that I set down and I'm like, this is a standalone, they never are. They never are. And I'm like, because the book I just released, A Corruption of Gilded Ashes, we all agree, because it is a collaborative shared world. So I created this world, and then I invited other authors to write in it.
Nice.
We all agreed that our cap was going to be like 70,000 words. My book hit 100,000 and I wasn't done. So I was like, I'm going to stop here and I'll just write another book, because I don't want my book to be like 200,000 words. And then every other book in this collection is like 75,000. It's going to be unbalanced. So my story will be continuing as an offshoot from that world. But I'm like, this is a standalone. And I'm like, this is so not a standalone. And I've learned that, like, I am a lot more descriptive, and my worlds are fuller now than when I first started publishing. So there are just so many more words that are added to the manuscript now.
Lolita just got excited.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there would be more coming from the water griffins and the mermaids. So yeah.
Nice. Was that a fun experience, having other people write in a shared world? Did you find that an interesting experience for yourself? What was it? What did you get out of that you didn't expect?
So this was the second one that I've done. My first one came out in 2021, and it was kind of like, okay, I want to do this. Let's see. And I was building out my process. So that was more of a learning curve of like how to manage one. This time around, it was so much more organized, and we spent a lot more time developing the actual, like, politics and the connections through the different species, like all of that. We spent like every other week on Zoom for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like really getting into that. But one of the things I noticed is that there are some things that some authors do in their world building that other authors do not even pay attention to. And there are a couple things I'm like, oh my God, you guys are right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm learning from them as we're doing it. So I think that's something that a lot of people miss out on with like the collaborative process. Like, even if you're not writing on a project together, it's so beneficial to have other writers that you talk to about the process, because there are things that they were bringing up. I'm like, dang, I know that it naturally gets in there, but I don't specifically think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a part of my planning process, right? So having to do those things up front, because all this information needs to be laid out for the authors, so we can all go write a book and make sure that these books feel like they belong in the same world. Because the way they're written is they're all standalones, but it's like moving country to country in a world, right? So there's a different culture and everything, but the general, information has to be the same across the board. And somebody would bring up something like, you're right, I didn't think about that. Let's put that on the next call, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so it was the collaborative process is always, you're going to get information back and forth, but the learning in it was way more than I expected it to be this time around.
Did you all stay within one genre? Did you figure out a genre and say, this is how everybody's going to write in?
Yeah. So I only invited authors who already write, because I didn't want to have to be like that. That's a curve that no one really wanted to tackle. But I create what is basically like a spec sheet of like, this is the vibe we're going for, right? Like, these are our comp titles. This is the energy. This is, I even had them do like character profiles of their MCs, because I'm like, the challenge that they go through in this collection is a mental challenge. So when I invited them, I'm like, you have to get in your character's head and you have to like break them as much as possible. So we had to do all of that up front. But then after that, it's like the books are written in their own voice and their own tone, so that when readers come into their world or they're part of the world, they get to know the author through the project.
Nice. Well, Jessica, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I'm real excited to meet you at Multiverse and see you on a panel and see you shine. Congratulations on all your success and all you're doing and being a full-time writer. It's awesome. And tell everybody where they can find these awesome books of yours.
You can find me at jessicacage.com or jcageauthor on all social media.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Jessica. And I just wanted to quickly say goodnight to everybody. But before I do, I wanted to mention we have a brand new show coming out to our multiverse audience. This might be something that you're interested in. On Tuesday, it's called Zero Means You're Dead, and it's hosted by SM Hillman. And it's all about indie RPGs and indie role-playing games. And he does some news. He does some interviews. It's a really cool show that I think you're all going to dig. So check that out on Tuesday. That'll premiere Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Other than that, we have our season finale of this show next week, where I'm going to have the programming director, Vanessa Junta, joining me for the entire hour. And we're going to pick her brain about everything that's going on in Multiverse, what's changed, what's new, all the wonderful things like that. And with that being said, thank you, everybody, for joining us. It was nice talking to everybody. And remember that it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you next time.